Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, I want to take the time here to actually explain to you what it actually takes to be creative, right? But I think the first step to help you understand it better is to actually debunk the old thinking about creativity first, right? So I would assume you guys think about creativity as in you can do anything you want or like whatever you want when you edit the video, right? But for me, that's not true at all. And I think to actually help you understand it better, it's good that I show you some example. So let's watch this video at a minute and then let me explain you after.
Relax. Just relax. Can you find your Once you locate those, I need you to grab them.
What do you mean by that?
After you grab them, I need you to go find some shoes. You got some shoes, you can go walk. You can go run. As far as the gym you can't find, do you have a floor where you live? Do some fucking push-ups. Do some sit-ups. We're waiting to find purpose. We're waiting to find why. We're waiting to find all this shit before we start. The thing about it is this. Start now. So when you find your fucking purpose, you find your why, you...
So after you watch that video, you probably see that that's the video that I can do anything I want, whether I want, right? But it doesn't look creative at all, right? It's like one thing, and that one thing is constraint, right? So when I think about creativity, I think about some certain constraint that I actually put on myself, right? Some restriction or constraint. And I actually push that constraint to its limits. Again, I think it would be easier for me to show some example.
There are 4 types of luck. The first type is blind luck, the things you're just given. Where you're born, who you're born to, the circumstances of your life, you cannot control them. Second type is luck from motion. That's when you're going around hustling, creating connection. You just create so many collisions that luck might strike. And the third type is luck from awareness. You get so good at spotting opportunities that you can see luck coming from a mile away. And the fourth type is luck from uniqueness. Your interests that you have so much deep knowledge on, you become the expert that everyone is seeking out for specific types of opportunities.
And this is like the video that I edited like a while ago, and I actually put up to 4 constraints on myself, right? So there's like 4 restrictions that I have to follow until like from the start until the end of the video, right? So the first one is the constraint on color. I only allow myself to actually use 3 colors, that's white, black, and blue, right? If I watch like throughout the video, you're not gonna find any other color except from that 3 color, right? That's the first constraint. So the second constraint that I actually put on myself is when I apply the asset of like the human figure cutout, I have to make them blue. And again, I apply this constraint throughout from the start until the end of the video. And the third constraint that I put on myself is a constraint about the asset again, right? But in this case, I forced myself to actually add like a pencil drawing asset to every scene that I edit in that video, right? And then my last constraint is the constraint of the use of the background, right? If you notice it, it doesn't matter what color the background is, either black or white, I'm still going to use the grid background to keep everything within that constraint, right? So in that video, I have 4 constraints right there. But one thing you have to understand that it's not only set constraint and you're gonna become creative, right? That's not true. You have to set the constraint and you have to push it, right? For example, in this video, I have Michael Jordan, right? And if you look at it, I would say that it looked really creative how I presented it. But if you don't actually push it, you can just slap the image of Michael Jordan there and just make it blue, like just like stand still there, right? That would look really boring and not interesting at all. You wouldn't say like creative. Like I said, you have to really push it, right? So how it does that Michael Jordan scene is actually, instead of just slapping his image on that, just make him blue, right? That doesn't look creative. So what I did is that I actually make him jump and look like he's gonna dunk the basketball into the hoop, right? And actually keyframe him to getting closer and closer, represent him actually jumping up. And then I also used the third constraint, right? I had to use that pencil drawing asset to use it as an arrow to represent the force that he actually used to jump off the ground, right? And then I just followed. The first constraint is actually only blue, black, and white, and then the second one where I put the person figure cutout, I have to make it blue, right? I follow all 4 constraints in that one scene right there. I think the best way to do it is that after you set some certain constraint on yourself, right, you have to ask yourself, how can I make this constraint or like make it working together to create something really interesting to look at? And it's really different on like different person, because different person have like different skill set and different tastes, right? And I think it's only you that can tell if you actually push the limits of each constraint that you put on yourself. And I think that's the way to actually become more creative. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to be cover the fundamental law of short form editing. When I edit my short form contents, I always have 3 laws that I keep that in mind every single time. These 3 laws, when applied to the video, this will help make your video more engaging and then easier to watch. First law is keep things moving every 3 to 4 seconds. And I think I mentioned earlier in the previous module that in a short form content space, people have really short attention span, right? So you have to keep things moving every 3 to 4 seconds so they can have something new to look at. And that would actually reset their attention span, so they would keep like staying on the video and doesn't actually swipe to watch the next one. And then when you repeatedly introducing new thing, like every 3 to 4 seconds, new stuff coming in, every 3 to 4 seconds, new stuff coming in the scene, right? That will actually keep them engaged and keep them watching until the end of the video. And the second law that I actually follow is that I only have 3 main color in one scene. So I see a lot of people when they actually edit the video, right? Sometimes they use like too many color, or sometimes the color doesn't actually work really well together. So to actually remove that problem, I'm actually come up with the second law, is that only 3 color can be used in one scene. Is that black color, white, and the color of your choice, right? So the third color could be anything you want. That's not black and white, because if you choose black and white, it's going to be only 2 colors, right? So it could be anything like red, orange, blue, green, like anything you can think of. And these laws actually keep your video more consistent throughout the video from the start until the end. But if you're an expert editor, feel free to actually implement more color into one scene, right? But just have to make sure that you know what you're doing, and you have to make sure that color actually implement each other. The third law of editing is that if you cannot add something on a scene and make it last on a scene up to minimum 3 seconds, do not add it at all, right? This might sound confusing, but let me explain. So in the first law, I said you have to keep things moving every 3 to 4 seconds, right, to reset the attention span. So you might ask me, well, if you reset something faster, isn't gonna make video more engaging, right? But let me tell you that when you actually introduce something for the audience to watch in the video, or like introduce new thing in the scene, right? Take them some time to actually process what is going on, like what it is that they're looking at, right? So if you actually add stuff on a scene, but you cannot make it last up to minimum 3 seconds, you actually doesn't give the audience a chance to actually process what have been shown to them. And they would think about it as a distraction and actually swipe away on your video. And by applying these 3 laws of editing, this will actually help boost up your engagement of your video and make it easier to watch for the audience. And these are 3 laws of short form editing. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to be cover the fundamental law of short form editing. When I edit my short form contents, I always In this video, we're going to be talking about what's the difference between podcast clip and the talking head clips. I think it's good to know the difference between the podcast clip and the talking head clips, because when you're editing like these two type of content, right, you actually have to edit like these 2 type of video actually slightly different, right? But it's not as much, but it's just like slightly different. It's focused on different thing. So let's start with podcast clips. So usually the podcast clip would actually have better flow compared to the talking head clips. It would actually feel a lot less scripted than the talking head. So when I edit my podcast clip, I usually use my editing to actually enhance the story that is being told in the podcast by the speaker. So these are some characteristics of the podcast clips. First is actually it feels less scripted. The second, we're gonna focus more on flow and focus more on story. That's 3 main characteristics of the podcast clip. Now let's move on to the talking head clips. So with talking head clip, it's definitely gonna feel more scripted compared to the podcast clips, but the intention of the talking head usually going to be about educational and teaching people some certain stuff, right? So that's when my editing come in. So usually when I edit the talking head, I usually use a lot of infographic to actually break down the idea of like what speaker is saying. I use my edits to actually break it down into like visualized editing, so it's easier for the audience to understand. So now let's move on to the talking head clips. So talking head clip would actually feel a lot more scripted compared to the podcast clips, but the intention of the talking head clips, it usually is about educational and mostly spreading some awareness and teaching people certain stuff, right? Like people use the talking head to actually use it to build that personal brand, to kind of like make them authority of different industry, right? So they're teaching people some certain stuff. And when I edit talking head video, I actually tend to focus on the idea, like the main idea, right? I always think, okay, how can I use my edits to break down the ideas? Like, let's say it's difficult to understand, right? How I can use my edits to break down that idea to like small piece, so the audience can understand it a lot easier. I usually use something like infographic or like motion graphic, maybe number to actually explain some certain things, but it's really depend on the video, like what this topic is about. And to summarize, when you edit the podcast clips, you have to focus more on flow and storytelling. And when you're editing talking head, you will use your editing to actually break down the idea and make it easier to understand. Now you understand the difference between the talking head and the podcast clip. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to be talking about emotion and what it takes to actually create the emotion in the video. But first, let's talk about what are some emotion that can be created inside the video, right? So first come to mind, it's fun and uplifting. The second one gonna be suspense and serious. And the third one is gonna be sad and depressed, right? Let's get like 3 main emotion that you usually find in the short form content. So when you edit the video, you have to keep that in mind because you don't want to actually go against the emotion of the video. You actually want to enhance the current emotion within the video. And when you actually try to create the emotion that actually doesn't enhance the video or actually go against it, the video will feel really weird. So for example, you probably know Mr. Beast. His short form content, it's all like uplifting, fun, excitement, right? But if I decide to actually edit the video but make it more like serious and suspense or maybe like even sad, right? That wouldn't really fit with Mr. Beast's video, right? And that is like why you don't actually try to make the emotion of the video or like try not to edit the emotion of the video to go against the current video that in the video itself. And I think now you actually have better understanding of what is actually emotion in the video. Now we're gonna move on to how to enhance it. These are 3 main keys to create emotion in the video. We can use sound effect to actually create tension in the video, such as we add riser into the video, right? Or you can use sound effect to actually emphasize some certain keyword inside the video to make the video more serious and make audience actually focus more on that specific keyword, right? And the type of sound effect that you choose to use is actually really important as well, right? Because you have to keep the same sound effect really consistent throughout the video. For example, let's say you watch the James Bond video, right? The movie is really serious, really suspended, right? But if somehow the editor of that movie decide to use like some cartoon sound effect like this, you probably feel like something's off. So you actually have to make sure that the type of sound effect that you use actually match with the mood or the emotion of the video as well. Now let's move on to the background music. The background music, when applying, can actually change or like shift the whole mood of the video. So you have to be really careful what background music you decide to use, right? But it's really lucky for us that Epidemic Sound actually categorize their background music by the mood of the video. So it's make our job a lot easier as an editor. I think the best way to add the sound effect is actually you have to watch the video a couple times first and get the better understanding of what the whole topic is about. Now you understand the emotion of the video, right? And then you would go to some Epidemic Sound to actually find a sound effect. On there you can find a bunch of like mood out there, right? They would have uplifting, suspension, serious, and like everything, and you have to pick the right one that actually best fit with your video. Because by applying the wrong background music, your hard work of like editing for like 3 hours, 5 hours can go to waste. And lastly, pacing. So pacing is essentially the frequency of a word being said, right? If I say fast-paced video, it means the word that being said in the video is really frequent. Let's say 3 words per second, right? That's like really fast when you speak. Or when I say slower, it's the opposite, right? So the word that being said per second is going to be slower, maybe like 1 or 2 words per second. And that's what I use to either this video is fast-paced or slower paced. So now you know what pacing is, but how can we use it to enhance the emotion in the video, right? So I would say that by pacing the video faster is actually best fit for a video that contains something that uplifting, fun, or excitement, right? But if you make the video slower paced, that would actually best fit for something more serious, suspense, or even sad. And now we have covered the fundamental of what create the emotion in the video. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to be talking about how to create flow and pacing. So in this previous video, we talked about pacing in general, right? And in this video, we're going to deep dive into how you can create it. First, I think we actually have to talk about flow first because we haven't talked about it yet, right? So flow is essentially the how smooth you can transition from one topic to the next topic inside the video, right? The video with good flow actually have to be able to suck the audience in like at the start and to the end, right? Because like each topic actually flows together really good, so they just keep watching at the start to the end, like I said. And I think how to create good flow is quite simple. So for me, you're just going to chop out all the filler word or the also cut out all the silence where they pause and think, right? Because we don't want someone to watch the video and then the speaker is talking about something and then they just pause for like 2 to 3 seconds like that. We have to cut that out, right? Because we don't want the audience to actually watch just like the empty space, because remember that attention span is really short, so you have to keep things moving really quick. And by removing that filler word, moving that silence or the gap, right, we shorten the period of like each topic closer together, so it's flow like really well, and that actually would make the audience stick and watch until the end of the video. Now let's talk about pacing. I think we covered a lot about pacing in the previous video, but now we're going to dive deep a little bit into how you can actually create pacing in a video, because we didn't talk about it yet. We talked about what is the pacing, but now we're going to talk about how to create pacing, or like what is a good pacing. And just to remind you again, pacing is essentially the frequency of the word being said in the video, right? Fast pace means a lot more words said in 1 second. Slower pace is just like less words said per second. It can be difficult sometimes to control pacing because you don't really have control over what the speaker have to say in the video, or like how fast they would speak, right? But something you can do is you can leave some gaps between the sentence, right? So it can be difficult sometimes to control pacing because you have no control over what the speaker will say, or like and how fast they would say some certain thing inside their own video, right? Let's say grab something from the podcast you have no control over. But one thing you can do is you can actually, when you chop up the video, right, if you want your video to actually be slower paced, you're just not gonna cut and put the sentence next to each other like that. You're gonna cut it, but you actually leave some gaps in between, right? So a little pause there, so we slow down the pacing a little bit. And to make the pacing faster, you just remove that gap and just make things just like move on one topic to the next topic, or like next word really fast without any gaps between. So the flow and the pacing need to be adjusted every single time when you edit a new video, right? Let's say you edit something that's more fun, excitement, you can use more faster pace. But if you edit something more emotional, more serious, you can use slower pace, right? So you have to adjust, be able to adjust between the video, because you can't just do the same thing with every video, right? Because that would actually, like I said earlier in the emotion video, that you don't want to go against the emotion of the current video. You have to build off that, and the pacing is one thing that actually helps build off the emotion, so have to keep that in mind. And that's the basic of creating pacing and the flow in the video. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to be talking about how to create a scene that actually look good. For me, there's multiple factors that actually take to actually create a good looking scene, right? So first, actually consistency of the asset, the quality of the asset, and the balance of the asset. So let's get started with number one. When I say consistency of the asset, right, I think it's easier for me to give some example first, so we understand it a little bit better. So let's say you decide to wear a suit, right? A nice expensive suit, and you go out, but you also decide to wear a swimming short as well. People would actually look at you funny, because like, why this guy would just wear a suit with swimming shorts, right? Because it look really weird and it doesn't go well together. I think same thing with the asset, right? You have to find thing that really consistency like throughout the whole video. Let's say for example, you decide to use like realistic cutout. You have to stick with that throughout the video, right? Because if you use something like realistic cutout and then you also use something more like cartoon cutout in the one scene, that wouldn't actually work really well together. It would actually go against each other, and then it's gonna create like that small conflict in the scene because it doesn't really go well together. Just like putting on a nice suit with the swimming shorts. When you decide to use one type of asset, you have to stick with that type for the rest of the video to keep things consistent from the start to the end. So the second factor of what take to create a good looking scene is the quality of the asset. Let's use the suit for example again, right? Let's say you own like a nice suit, nice expensive suit, right? And you decide to go outside, right? But if they have like a dust on it, you can like have some rip on the back, they got some cut on the legs, whatever, right? That suit wouldn't actually look good because it look old and doesn't look like being take care of, right? Same thing with the asset. It doesn't matter how good the asset is, you actually have to make sure that the quality is still there, right? Trying to go for like really high resolution asset so that when you zoom it in, it wouldn't break into like pixel like the lower resolution asset that you would find like most of the places on internet. And if you decide to use the low quality asset, that would actually cheapen the video, right? If you say, oh, I'm gonna add the low quality asset, do not add it at all, because that actually make the video worse. And the last factor of what it takes to actually create a good scene is the balance balance of the asset. Let's say for example, I add something on the right side of the screen. I also have to add something on the left side of the screen to actually balance it out. I can't just add everything on the right or everything on the left, right? Because that would actually not balance it out with the whole scene, because we don't want to leave like so much like empty space in the video, because that's gonna make it look really empty, right? Instead, you're gonna actually balance it out. So let's say you add something on the bottom, now you have to add something on the top to balance it out, right? Or if you have only one thing that you want to showcase in your edit, just try to put in the middle and try to like add something like around it inside the middle, so it's balanced out really well. We now just cover all three factors that actually make the scene look good. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to talk about how to add the right amount of editing in one video. Alright, so we're gonna do things a little bit differently here. So I'm gonna give you an analogy that would actually help you understand things a lot easier. Let's say you cook food for your family, right? You wouldn't necessarily just add like a bunch of salt, just add like all the sugar you have in the kitchen. You wouldn't add like all the spice that you have, right? Just dump it in as much as you can in the food, because that food will end up tasting really bad and no one would actually want to eat it. You would actually, but instead you would actually put the right amount of salt, put the right amount of sugar, the right amount of spice into the food, right? And you also need to understand, okay, like how this food should taste like, or like what should I add in this food, right? First, before you're actually adding some stuff. Same thing go with editing. If you don't understand the video before you actually go ahead and edit the video, you would just add some random edits onto it without it's actually implement the video, or it's actually not going to enhance the story in the video, right? So what I recommend you to do is actually rewatch the video multiple times, let's say 2-3 times, right? To get the better understanding of the video. Like you might even have to take note about what they say, right? Just like take some keyword of like what the speaker, or like what's the message behind it, right? So after you understanding like the topic of the speaker, or like what speaker trying to say, right? Now it's gonna be a lot easier for you to understand where I should add the edits, but I'm not gonna add the edits, or what should I add in the edits, right? That would actually be a lot easier for you, right? And it's actually gonna make the video a lot easier as well. It's because when you don't understand the topic that speaker was like speaking in the video, you would just add like the edits into some like random space, add like random edits into it, because you don't actually understand it. So actually understand it first and actually go ahead and start editing. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to be talk about how to create the style, right? You can use this technique to actually create the style for your own or create for your client. Like I said in the how to be creative module, right? So you have to set constraint on yourself and push it to the limit. And those constraints actually working together, and you apply those constraints consistently throughout one video. That's called style. And to understand how to create the style, you have to understand what are some main constraints that you should put on yourself. So the first constraint that you must put on yourself is the constraint on color. When you put constraint your color, you essentially set the restriction. I'm like, okay, these are some certain color that I can use only, and I cannot use another color else in the video. So that would actually keep the video more consistent, and then that would actually the first step of creating style, right? That's the first constraint right there. And then the second constraint on the type of the asset that you use in the video, right? This can be realistic, cartoon, paper cutout, could be anything, right? But that's a constraint. If you set that, you have to stick with it throughout the video, right? You can't just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do people cutout, and then the next one you're gonna do like cartoon cutout of the car, right? That wouldn't actually work well together, and you also break the constraint that you put on yourself, right? And when you put that second constraint yourself, the constraint of the asset, right? This would help you actually be able to see like or visualize your editing a lot easier, because you don't have to think about all the things in the world that out there, right? You have the constraint, not just focus on this like main 4 thing in front of you. So third, the constraint on theme, right? This could be like tech, could be like people, artistic, or real life. So when you said the constraint on theme, I'm talking about what are like the object, or what are like the concept that you would use to actually using it to represent the idea of what speaker is like speaking in the video. And the last constraint that you should put on yourself is the constraint on font that you use in the video. You would actually put the restriction on yourself of how many font you will use the video and what are they. I would actually recommend to keep it under 3 font in a video. And after you decide what are these 4 constraints would be, now you actually got your own style. But keep that in mind that these 4 constraints cannot be break. You have to follow it throughout all your video, right? Otherwise you will break it, and if you break it one time, right, the mistake that when you break it is gonna stand out a lot because you consistently follow the constraint, right? But if something just like kind of pop out a little bit, they would be able to see it really clear that that's like kind of like stand out of nowhere, right? So make sure apply it consistently throughout the video. And after you master your 4 constraint that you put on yourself, right, you can feel free to have up to like 5 constraints, 6 constraints on yourself when you edit the video, right? That would actually make your style kind of more complicated, and I would say actually harder to replicate it, right? But it's also harder for you to edit as well, and that would require a lot of creativity to actually working with like really high number constraint on yourself. And that's it, simple as that, right? You just learn how to create your style. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video I will be talking about some laws that I follow when I actually working on the audios for my short form content. So when I work on my audio, sound effect, background music, right, or like even like the speech of the speaker, I actually have 3 laws that I follow every time I do it. Is that the first one is actually music and sound effect will not be louder than the speech of the speaker, right? Because like the speech of the speaker is actually what telling the story. We don't want like the background music to actually overpower it, or we don't want any like sound effect to actually overpower what the speaker have to say, right? Because that's like the main thing that actually keeps the audience engaged, because that would actually disrupt the story, right? And that would actually might cause the audience to skip your video and watch the next one, which is not good. So the second law is that the audio, the sound effect, and the background music I add in the video, right, have to actually enhance the emotion of the video. This can be referred back to the emotion module in the previous video. And the third law is that the audio actually have to match the movement within the video, right? For example, I think it's actually more specific to sound effect because background music doesn't really apply from these laws. Because sound effect, right? For example, I see the glass breaking in the video, right? But I decide to actually add something like the car crash, right? It would actually doesn't match with actually what's happening in the video, right? But that's just like extreme example for you to actually easily understand. Another example is that when you add something like, let's say the glass break, right? And then you add the glass breaking sound effect 1 second later, that would feel something off, right? That would actually throw the audience off a lot because what they see and what here it doesn't matching. So we have to try your best to match what is audience like currently looking at, or like what's happening in the scene, and then what they can hear in the video, right? You have to try to match that, because if you don't match it, it's gonna throw the whole video off. You're gonna feel like, oh, it's a little bit off, right? Have you seen like the video, let's say the video when the speaker, right, the speech is like a little bit late, right, and it doesn't match with the speech, that would actually feel really off. And if you fail to follow these 3 laws, it actually could make your video look cheaper and lower the quality overall. And if you're working for someone else, it will actually make them really unhappy with the result, right, because the quality is not there. And if you follow these 3 laws, your audio work would be flawless. Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to talk about why is hook so important. Well, you probably heard a bunch of people, right, especially in short form content, that they said you have to have a good hook, you have to have good hook, you have to have a good hook, right? But why is this hook thing is so important, right? So I think it's good for me to explain for those who don't know like what is hook is first, and then we can get into it after, right? So what is hook, right? So hook would actually locate at the first 3 to 4 seconds when the video start playing. So good hook actually have to contain big bold text that actually summarize what will happen in the video in one interesting sentence. And the second thing that it needs to contain is that some interesting graphic for the audience to look at, right? It can be like a famous person or something that people recognize really well. For example, right, let's say you talk about soccer, you might put Messi on there. If you talk about basketball, you might put LeBron James on there, right? Because like that is like people can recognize him like a lot, and they know like they feel like related to the video. And a good hook actually should make the audience feel like they actually want to stick and watch the video, right, until the end of the video, right? Because that's what good hook does. It should spark the curiosity inside their brain, like, okay, like would it actually happen, or like what would happen in the video, right? Make them curious, and then that would actually suck them in to watch the whole video. And now you know what is a hook and what's a good hook, right? So now we're gonna talk about why is it so important, because hook is actually like a door to your house, right? It doesn't matter how nice your house is, but if you have no way to get in, like a door, right, you can't get into the video. It's same thing, right? So hook is tell the audience like the reason why you should watch the rest of the video, right? So the rest of the video is like the house. The hook allow the audience to get into your contents. And if you have a bad hook or like a hook that actually doesn't make the audience interesting, they would just ignore you and just swipe on you, right? And I see like a lot of people make a mistake here. They think they actually have like a good content. They're like, oh nah, the hook doesn't matter, right? People watch my video no matter what. Like, no, that's totally wrong, because the hook is like the most important thing, because that's the first thing they see, right? The audience doesn't really know who you are. They don't know what you do. They don't know what's gonna happen in the video, right? And so you actually have only 3 to 4 seconds at the start of the video to actually explain yourself, kind of tell like, okay, who I am, or like why you should listen to me, or like what value I would give it to you, right, into the video before they actually feel bored and actually swipe on you. And to summarize this video is that hook is like the door to the house, right? It's like the most important thing is that it tells the audience the reason why they should watch the video, right? That's why it's so important. Without hook, no one would watch your video. And that's why hook is so important in short form content.